From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
And the ordinances of the city of Fall River.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
It's out of the frying pan and into the fire for Sam Sutter. The Bristol County District Attorney has been making headlines for more than a year as he led the prosecution of former Patriot Aaron Hernandez, who goes on trial this month. Now he's taking the reins as the 47th mayor of Fall River after ousting embattled incumbent Will Flanagan in a recall election last month. His priorities include tackling the city budget, bringing down unemployment, and combating drug addiction. This week on Newsmakers, we sit down with Fall River's new mayor, Sam Sutter. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Ted Nisi. Tim White is off this week, and I'm very pleased to be joined. Sitting in my usual seat, we have the city editor of the Herald News, Will Richmond. He knows more about Fall River than most people there. He's forgotten more about Fall River than most people there know, so I'm very glad to have Will. And Mayor Sam Sutter, newly elected mayor. Thanks for joining us, Mayor.
Ted, thank you. Good to see you. Thanks
Congratulations.
for having me on. Will, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So has it sunk in yet that you are now the mayor of Fall River?
Not completely, because of everything that's taken place over the last 3 or 4 weeks. The last 2 weeks of the campaign were a whirlwind. As I was saying to you off the air, we had 6 hours of debates in 3 nights, and then that last weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday, going nonstop. And then, of course, election night. And then as soon as the victory was over, I had to get right back to work on the many issues that I faced. I have this whiteboard that I go to every morning, and there were quadrants like the transition into City Hall, the transition out of the DA's office, the swearing-in ceremony, the appointment of the next DA. And every day I'd put up the various things that I had to do in each one, and there were always too many. So in any case, it's been a whirlwind, but I haven't completely gotten accustomed to being called mayor.
Well, we'll get you used to that on this show today, Mayor. Some people were surprised when you went for this because this looked like your big moment as DA, the Aaron Hernandez trial starting just days from now. And some people wonder, why did you decide to move on at a time when the district attorney's office was in the spotlight? Is it a sign you didn't think the case was going to be good or something else? Why did you move on now?
Not at all. That I'll say 2 things. First off, with respect to the case and my moving on, were I part of the trial team, I wouldn't have run. But I made a decision, let's see, we're January 2015, so I made a decision in early 2014 that I was not going to be part of the trial team. The way I ran the district attorney's office, every district attorney is different. And we have different concentrations within our offices. I have chosen to run the district attorney's office in a very hands-on way with all of the divisions, and there are 12. Once again, my whiteboard, when I put them up with the 12 divisions, every week I'm determining what I'm going to be doing in the various divisions. So that was completely antithetical to what I would have needed to do to be part of the trial team. And Bill McCauley and Pat Bomberg, for whom I have the greatest regard, they made it very clear what I needed to do for them to be comfortable with me being part of the trial team, and that was know the case as well as they did. So there are over 20,000 pages of documents. There are 300 witnesses. There was no way that I could run the district attorney's office the way I'd been running it and be part of the trial team. And against the recommendation of my wife, the passionate recommendation of my wife, I decided I was not going to be part of the trial team. And so as we approached the day of decision for running in the recall election, knowing that I wasn't part of the trial team, knowing that the case was going to be ready to go on January 9th, knowing that we were almost all the way through the pretrial motions, to me that wasn't antithetical to the decision that I made to run for mayor. The trial team was set, the trial was ready to go, and therefore I could run for the mayor of Fall River. So that's just one part of it. The other part was I felt that it was sort of now or never for me if I was ever going to be mayor of Fall River, because I was pretty certain that Will Flanagan was going to lose. I mean, I've got pretty good political instincts after 8 years in the business of politics and a lifetime of loving politics and following it. So I could just tell from conversations I was having around the city. I didn't need to see a poll. I knew Will was in big trouble. And I figured that somebody else among those who were thinking about running was going to win. And then that person would be given a grace period in order to see what they could do. And that was not going to allow for me to run for mayor. So it was the combination of the city reeling, Will going to be recalled, and the a sort of now or never situation, I thought, as far as my running for mayor, so I stepped forward.
You did wait a few days to hand in your resignation. This morning we're taping on Friday, and
right.
Your resignation as DA took effect today, Friday. Why the delay? Were you pushing for? Everyone thinks you were pushing for Tom Quinn, your top deputy there.
Well, I'll answer the first part of the question first. Why was I DA and mayor for 3 days? And the reason was because I wanted to know who the next district attorney was going to be. There would be no way to effect a proper transition without knowing who the next district attorney was going to be. So before I stepped down, I wanted to know who that was. And when I learned who that was yesterday, had a pretty good idea Wednesday evening, but formally yesterday, I then drafted my letter of resignation for this term, which ends January 7th, and my it's called declination, my declining the election of November 4th for next term because I have been elected to the position of mayor.
All right, let's go to a question from Will Flanagan from the Herald News. Will Richmond, excuse me.
You're
Too many
not the first.
Wills in
Not
Fall
the
River.
first.
Yeah, sorry. Will.
Oh, you've resigned officially this morning.
Right. Resigned and declined.
And declined.
Yeah, and declined.
Now,
I'll keep emphasizing that because I think some people around me sort of missed the combination of the two, but it's clear that they're two different decisions. And
We're confident you're done being the DA.
Two different appointments.
Sure.
Right.
There were a couple of unfortunate events that happened in Fall River yesterday.
Right.
A homicide took place and another reported shooting.
Right.
Did those have any effect in speeding up the process in your
No.
resignation? Were you finding any conflicts of interest in your work between?
No. Once
both
again,
offices?
two-part question. So the process of naming the next district attorney really accelerated beginning Wednesday morning, and by Wednesday evening, it was fairly certain who the person was going to be. And so when I got the phone call early Thursday morning, that's yesterday morning, about the fatal shooting, I was still the district attorney, and I acted as the district attorney. And I was involved in conversations with Mike Kahlane, who was the assistant district attorney on the scene, and Bill McCauley, who is the first assistant in charge of investigations of homicides and all investigations. But there has been no charging decision yet, Will, on the case. Nobody's been charged with homicide, and rightfully that should be the next district attorney's decision, and it will be.
Speak to that as mayor, though. You have a murder, New Year's Day morning. Are you worried that we're going to see rising violence this year? Do you think it's a one-off? And, more generally, what's going to be your approach to crime fighting as a mayor versus DA?
Gun violence and gang activity in Fall River are down markedly from 2004, 5, and 6. I remember an article in the Herald News, which I think won an award about all of the gang violence and gang activity. This was an article that was done by someone who actually interviewed somebody at the jail about the gang activity and the gun violence. Jack Souza, the police chief at the time in 2006, said gun violence was at an all-time high. Nobody's saying that now. I've had a great relationship with both Jack Souza and his successor, Dan Racine, a great relationship with the members of the Fall River Police Department, and working together with the District Attorney's Office, we've cut both gun violence and gang activity. So now I see a congruity. I'm mayor. I get to be deeply involved in public safety, and I will have a very good working relationship with the district attorney that Governor Patrick is about to appoint. It's going to be up to Governor-elect Baker to determine whether that person will continue to be the district attorney, but I hope so. And I think that we can do even more to reduce gun violence and gang activity, and major drug dealing, and all of the initiatives of public safety over the next few years while I'm the mayor. I'm very proud of the work we've done so far, and I should add that last January at a press conference, that's January 2014, Dan Racine and Mayor Flanagan and I brought to everybody's attention that violence was down in Fall River, armed robberies, gun violence. I can't remember the other crime that was discussed at the time, but we're making strides in Fall River. It's one of the safest gateway cities, if not the safest, and I think we can do even more.
Do you plan to keep the current police chief?
Absolutely. His contract was just extended, and I think he's as fine a police chief as there is in all of Massachusetts. He's great to work with and a personal friend, and we talk all the time, and he's got the respect of his his staff. So yes, I do.
All right, let's go to Will.
You speak of the reductions in gun violence after you took over the district attorney's office. One of your strategies was the innovative use of the dangerousness statute and applying that to illegal gun crimes. Do you see any similar opportunities within the city's ordinances to take any innovative approaches to try to restructure what's happening in Fall River?
Will, that's a great question, and I'll answer it the same way I tried to answer it when I gave my speech on Tuesday when I was sworn in. I don't have nearly the learning curve that I did 8 years ago as a leader in leadership. Every day, virtually, every week, I learned lessons about leadership at the district attorney's office. But I do have a learning curve about the issues. But I have a lot of confidence in my creativity. And I think that there were a lot of creative ideas that we had at the district attorney's office, from the use of the dangerousness hearings to sending assistant district attorneys to the scenes of non-fatal shootings, to the volunteerism, to the protocols we established for victims' cases. I'm 100% confident that you're going to see us do some things that you haven't seen done before, because that's just been my nature since I was an adult, and I like to surround myself with imaginative people who think, to use a cliche that's overused, outside the box. So I think we're going to be able to do that. But am I able to give you some ideas right now? I just don't know the ordinances and the specifics well enough yet. But give me some time, and I think you'll see some similar ideas.
You told the reporters when they asked your first part of your first job, you said the budget, the budget, the
Absolutely.
budget. After you've been digging in a little bit,
Right.
we know you're still getting your feet wet in City Hall and
Right.
Government Center there. But what is the budget situation? How are the city's finances? Are you finding them as you take over?
The city's finances are under siege. We have debt obligations. We have liabilities with the pension system, with the sewer project, and I don't think that there has been enough long-term vision on these issues, and that's exactly what I want to bring to the equation. And there may be some trying to think of the right phrase right now, some bitter medicine that we have to apply. But rather than speak specifically at this juncture, I mean, this is a learning curve here, and I'm not going to need a lot of time. I mean, I talked about 6 months for my comprehensive plan for economic development. To really speak in detail about the budget, I would say a month. And I'm not sure whether there is a State of the City address that I'm going to be asked to give, but probably, I would imagine. And if so, that's when I plan to speak in detail about the situation.
We're coming up on a break, but briefly you mentioned the city's pension system. We've covered that problem a lot in Rhode Island, and looking at the numbers, it's kind of amazing. From a $50 million shortfall less than a decade ago to over $300 million today. I mean, do you think you're going to have to ask retirees to take cuts to restructure their pensions in Fall River?
I hope not. I don't think we're in the situation that Central Falls was in. But we're ranked 100th out of 104 in the solvency of our pension system. Obviously, we've got to make some changes. And I think that that's going to be one of my strengths, is my ability to explain to people why changes need to be made and to persuade them about the wisdom of the changes. And so, as I say to people when it's really been interesting to me, and I'll try to make this quick, but the difference between your regular citizens' approach to the mayor and the district attorney. I tell the story. I'd go into the place where I buy newspapers and snacks when I was district attorney, and maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, someone would say something to me, but generally no. Now I go there and I'm having 4, 5, or 6 conversations, so it really means a lot to people in Fall River. I'm sure it's true in Warwick, in Cranston, in Providence, the mayor. And so I get a lot of encouragement. And I think that I've sensed that people understand that we have to tackle these issues that to some extent we've been avoiding.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Fall River Mayor Sam Sutter and a little bit more about his days now over as Bristol County District Attorney. Stick with us on Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Ted Nesi, filling in for Tim White. Joining me on the panel this week in my usual seat is Will Richmond. He is the city editor at the Fall River Herald News. You should follow him on Twitter, Will_Richmond, right? You can get everything you need to know. And we're joined by the new mayor of Fall River, Sam Sutter. Mayor, you were the Bristol County DA until this morning. The Aaron Hernandez case, we talked about it a little bit before. There's a perception in some quarters that more resources were thrown at this because there's a superstar NFL player at the center of this, where there's a lot of unsolved murders in Bristol County. What do you say to that? Did the Hernandez case unbalance the resources in the DA's office?
Well, we devoted the resources that were needed for the particular case. So I'm not sure there's another district attorney's office in Massachusetts over the last 8 years that has solved 11 cold cases, and I'm not sure there's another district attorney's office in Massachusetts that has had a higher solve rate, which means bringing charges on homicides. Ours is somewhere between 80 and 85%. And I'm not sure there's another district attorney's office that has a higher percentage of winning homicide trials. So we've been right at the top in all of those categories. And we devoted the resources to the Aaron Hernandez case that were needed to bring charges and to develop the prosecution. And it was costly, and as a result of that, the cost, I did have to go to the governor, Governor Patrick, last October, so that would have been not October 2014, but October 2013, and ask for a supplemental budget, and he completely understood, a former prosecutor himself, and that I had to make the case with the governor to the legislature, and they understood. So we did receive a supplemental budget, and I'm very proud of the fact that we did, because the only precedent that we could find to make our case to the legislature was the unsolved homicide of Molly Bish in Worcester, which took place, I think, in 2000. So Worcester received a supplemental budget for that. We received a supplemental budget for this case.
How much is it cost so far, the extra cost for the Hernandez case?
Well, the supplemental budget we received was approximately $400,000. $200,000 on the prosecution side, on the district attorney side, and $200,000 on the state police side. I could be off by 10 or 20,000 on that, but I'm not off by more than that. So it has been costly, but once again, it was the cost commensurate with what we needed to do on the case. That's the approach that we took. I could tell you a story about the Robert Roy case. I don't know whether you remember that one, but that was an unsolved homicide from 1986. And one of the things that we needed to do was to drain a pond in Dartmouth, because we thought that's where some evidence would be. And the cost was going to be somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000. And we are an underfunded district attorney's office, in my opinion, and I could talk to you about the data to prove it. So that was a significant investment, but it needed to be done. And we did it, and it bore fruit. I mean, we found evidence that was very useful in winning that case.
Will?
You spoke earlier about not being part of the trial team made your decision to run for mayor being a little bit easier. What is the role of the district attorney in Aaron Hernandez case once it's happening? We're about a week away from jury selection happening. Day to day, is this on cruise control now in the hands of the prosecutors, or how involved would a district attorney be?
Well, it depends on the stage, Will. So in the beginning, when it was in the investigatory stage, I was on the phone constantly. Actually, when the murder of Odin Lloyd took place in the early morning hours of June 17th, 2013, I was in Washington for the National Volunteer Conference. I've gone for the last couple of years. As you know, that's been a big part of the Bristol District Attorney's Office, asking every lawyer in the office, that's about 60, 65 lawyers, and every manager, that's another 15 or so, to volunteer for a specific number of hours in the Bristol County community every year, mentoring, coaching, teaching after school, tutoring. And we've done that, over 20,000 hours now in 7 years, remarkable. So I was at the National Volunteer Conference when the case broke, and I was on the phone constantly. I flew back and was immediately involved in the investigation of that murder, and in the charging decision, and in the arraignment, and in the appeal of the district court ruling no bail for Mr. Hernandez. And then from that point in time, I was immediately involved in everything that took place, the presentation of the case to the grand jury, the initial decisions that had to be made on the case, one of which involved asking the judge, because of a past history with one of the prosecutors to recuse herself. She said that she would not. I completely understand the decision, and we moved on. Then through the discovery process, very deeply involved in the decision-making concerning that, the pretrial motion process, the motions to dismiss and suppress, the motions to eliminate.
Okay, we know you're involved.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about it in my mind. Thinking about it as we're going on. So now that the case is ready to go to trial and I'm not part of the trial team, you're right. I'm not involved other than to say, what's occasional phone call, what's going on? What are you guys up to? But beyond that, my role right now is greatly diminished from where it was.
I want to turn back to Fall River. Before that, just how long do you think this trial is going to last? It's starting up next week.
2 to 3 months.
2 to 3 months you expect. And
300 witnesses, the kind of jury selection process that they have, 2 to 3 months.
Do you think the jurors will go for the idea that you convict of murder even if they don't decide that they know Hernandez shot the guy?
Well, I can't comment in any fashion on anything like that. Judge Garsh has made it clear that because of my role as district attorney during the case, that I am under the provisions of the order, the gag order as it's called. So I can comment on the course of the case at the district attorney's office and my decision not to be part of the trial team and the trial team itself, but any aspect of the case like that, I can't comment on.
Well, let me ask something you can comment on. Fall River casinos. Foxwoods had a plan to bring a resort, or a proposal to bring a resort casino to Fall River. They were talking to Mayor Flanagan about it. Are you interested in that idea? Will you pursue it?
I might listen to what they have to say. That's not something that I've given a lot of thought to right now. I'm much more focused on the budget. I'm much more focused on restoring confidence in city government. I'm much more focused on doing what we can to improve the schools, to meet the net school spending figure, issues like that. If I got a call from Foxwoods or any of the other casino developers, naturally I would listen, but it's not something I'm giving a lot of. In fact, until you just asked me the question, I hadn't given.
So it's not a big priority for you then?
Well, it's not a big priority, no.
Another economic discussion there, the Amazon big distribution center they're talking about.
That's a big priority.
All right,
okay?
well, they were, as Will's paper reported, they pulled their proposal off a state economic assistance panels thing to take more time. Have you talked to anyone from Amazon, or is that run into trouble, or do you think it's still on track?
I had a lengthy meeting. Interestingly, the meetings that I had my first day in office were all about major issues facing the city of Fall River. So one of those meetings was with Ken Fiola. We were together for approximately an hour.
Economic Development Director.
Head of Economic Development, right. And I'm still optimistic. And that's something that I'm going to be concentrating on. That would be one of my top 5 priorities over the next few weeks. And as I said, I'm optimistic, and as I said to Ken, whatever I can do to help secure Amazon coming to Freetown, Fall River, I am ready to do, and that's the approach that I'm going to take. But I think that to get into the specifics of that would be something that Amazon wouldn't be happy about. So I'm going to be vague about the specifics, other than to say it's a top priority for me right now in the first month. And whatever I can do, I'm going to do to make it happen, because we need those jobs here in Fall River, and we've got the workforce that Amazon will be proud of. So,
Will?
Economic development seems to be an overall priority of yours. You mentioned 6 months in, you plan to release a plan. Why economic development? There seems to be a lot of short-term issues. You mentioned top 5. But why 6 months for economic development? And do you have confidence in the economic development process already taking place in Fall River?
I don't know enough about the economic development process already taking place in Fall River, but I think economic development is the key to not only Fall River, but New Bedford, Lowell, Holyoke, Lawrence. All of these gateway cities, all of these challenged gateway cities throughout New England. And I can guarantee you that there are things taking place in some of these gateway cities that aren't taking place in Fall River, and I want to bring those to Fall River. That was one of my themes during the campaign. Why not Fall River? Why not the best for Fall River? That's exactly what I want to bring. And I want the best people in place in city government. I want the best practices in place in city government. I want the most economic development. I think that there'll be a completely new energy in Fall River if we can do that, if we can bring new business to the city. So that's going to be one of my main focuses.
One of the driving factors, we have a minute left behind that recall, was this pay
This
as you
turned out to be a
throw.
lot longer than Milioti told me. it
There
was
you go.
gonna be,
I know.
so-
Well, we never tell you the truth in advance. You never give away your secrets. The pay as you throw program.
Yes.
Mayor Flanagan got recalled partly over that. Is that program here to stay for the residents, or are you going to seek to undo that?
Well, I'm going to look at it. I promised that during the campaign. I'm going to size it up. But from my vantage point right now, it seems to be working. I mean, I told the story in the campaign trail of the young lady behind the counter at the pizza place where I often go, and she said to me, I hated pay-as-you-throw at first, but she said, I've got to admit, I'm recycling more, I have less trash. I think it's working. And I think that's a consensus in the city, but it wasn't implemented very well, and I want to look at the costs, but it seems to be working.
All right, the new mayor of Fall River, Sam
Ted,
Sutter.
thank you
you
very
for
much.
coming in.
Yep,
Good
yep,
to see you.
Will,
Congrats
thanks.
on your new
Good seeing
job.
you.
Okay.
Will Richmond from the Herald News joined me today. Again, you can follow Will _Richmond, right?
Yes,
and you can
yes.
follow all the news of Fall River on the Herald News, as well as on WPRI.com and Eyewitness News. We'll also have full coverage of the Aaron Hernandez trial coming up in the coming weeks and months, so you won't want to miss any of that. And we'll see you back here next week with Tim White, don't worry, on Newsmakers. Thanks for joining us.
The whole